Welcome to another episode of the Cool Tools Show and Tell. Our special guest this week is Josiah Martens. So, Josiah, would you like to introduce yourself to our listeners and watchers?
Sure thing. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me, Kevin. I'm Josiah Martens. I'm based out of Eugene, Oregon. I'm a maker, a contractor, musician, artist, and sailor. I've got some fun things from my time as a sailor I wanted to share.
That's really great. We welcome you. Looking forward to your selection of tools. So tell me about your cool tool favorite number one. What would that be?
All right. Well, the first two very much go hand in hand. And I'm going to start with the Marlinspike. This is one that my friend made for me. They are often made with, I think this one's made out of stainless steel. And they are often made out of more malleable, more rust prone kind of iron. But it's essentially a knot tying tool, and it's just about as simple as it can get. It's just a long piece of tapered metal. You can have them, as small as a sewing needle. I've used the sewing needle for really small knot work in a similar way, or they can be up to a foot, 2 feet long for really large applications. But they're wonderful for splicing, and there is one application in particular that I find it's absolutely changed the way I've used, especially P cord. And there's a knot called the Marlinspike hitch. And this brings me to my second tool, which is knots in general, which is a little strange potentially, but we have so many ratchet straps and bungee cords and tape and adhesive and zip ties, and all of those are wonderful and have their place. But the tool, the psychotechnology of knowing how to tie stuff to stuff with just a simple piece of line is absolutely indispensable and has saved my bacon many, many times. And the way I use my Marlinspike probably most often is with a Marlinspike hitch. And it's very difficult to describe vocally, but it's essentially it's a hitch that you tie on the not with the loose end, but on the sort of like working length of line. And what it allows you to do is to use the Marlinspike as a handle that runs perpendicular to the line itself. So say you're hanging a bear bag in the forest with a tiny piece of P cord, and you can't get good purchase on that tiny piece of line, and you might wrap it around your hand. That bites into your hand. What you can do is you tie a Marlinspike hitch, and you use your Marlinspike as a handle, a perpendicular handle at any point of the line, and then you can like run backwards or pull it backwards, and it raises up the bear bag. You can then tie it off and pull out the Marlinspike, and the line just straightens itself. And there is a good video by animatedknots.com that we can link to. But that's probably one of my favorite knots. And one of my favorite knot books is the Marlinspike Sailor by Hervey Garrett Smith. It is, I don't know if it's still in print. I'm pretty sure there's a Kindle version, but I've not had trouble finding used versions. And it's one of the most practically salty books I have encountered, full of lots of really decorative knot work as well, which I've really gotten into. And yeah, those are
so let's go back to the first one, the Marlinspike itself, which is the one you were showing was about maybe a foot long, and it had this tapering, which was maybe an inch at the thickest, and kind of came to a blunt point.
Mm-hmm.
And, The idea is that I mean, most knots don't require a Marlinspike, right? I mean, I always associate with fairly decorative kind of knots, ball knots, or the things. And there
Mhm.
was a Marlinspike knot that you were just mentioning. But do you find yourself, if you have one, that you use it for tying knots in general?
With most gauges of line, it's not necessary when you're dealing with really, really hefty cables. Um, or really thick pieces of line, it gets a lot more. It becomes more indispensable. Either really tiny stuff or
I
really
see.
big stuff. Um, but as a tool, I've started carrying it like off when I'm not even dealing with line. I'll just have it with me because it makes for it's a pry bar, it's a hammer, it's a like I did is indispensable. I keep finding new uses for it. One of those.
So, and is it strength? I mean, is it necessary that it have high leverage? I mean, can it be made? Does it need to be made from a metal? I kind of always associate it with maybe just being wood or
Mhm.
something like that. So tell me about that. I mean, like if you went to buy a Marlinspike now today on Amazon, there's probably a selection of them. What kind would you recommend?
Most of them that I see when I just did a quick search preceding this call, there's the folding knife kind. So it comes with probably a sheep's foot blade and then a Marlinspike on the other side of the folder, and those work okay. Those are metal, um, but I like the sort of, I don't know, I guess fixed blade equivalent of a Marlinspike, where it's just a standalone tool. Probably like it's something between 8 and 10 inches is probably the ideal length. There are wooden knot tying tools, typically called fids, but don't those are typically not as slender.
Mhm.
So those have like a chunkier handle, maybe about an inch and a half in diameter, and then it tapers down to a point. And those are helpful, but not quite as diversely useful as I found the Marlinspike to be. Um,
Um, yeah. So, right by my desk, I have my little piece of rope that I use to
Perfect.
practice my knots
Mhm.
in the evening when I'm watching my YouTube. And what do you find? You mentioned this catalog of things from buckles and straps and zip
Mhm.
ties, which are really good. So what do you find yourself using these knots for on a day-to-day basis or week to week? So it's like I
Yeah.
understand the sailing. There's
Mhm.
lots of ropes and it's got gear need to be set up. So that makes all sense. But outside of sailing or boats, do you find that you need to know knots, or are there other knots besides your bowline that you come to depend on?
Yeah, absolutely. The what I love to use, I mean, there's always P cord, but what I love to use is a three strand stuff. It's just kind of small, but this is just a fairly narrow gauge 3 strand piece of line called seine twine. I think it's
What is it
pronounced
called sand, like SAN?
uh, a seine. Like that's
Oh,
how
seine.
I've heard it
Like
pronounced.
like a purse seine, like a fishing net seine.
Yes, and is that I think that's spelled like the River's in Paris, I
Oh
believe.
no, I don't know, but that
Um,
makes sense.
but I've always heard it pronounced Seine in the fishing or the sailing circles I've been in.
Uh-huh.
Um, so the 3 strand stuff I absolutely love. That allows for fairly simple eye splices, and so you can make a fixed loop in the end. And I use those all the time.
What do you use them for?
Tying up extension cables, tying up air hoses. That's super frequent. I had to do a lot of stuff with guitar cables and RCA cables, and so there's a lot of cordage around. Having just we call them nips on the boat, just little short lengths of seine twine with a eye splice in the end. And I was on a bicycle trip once, an ill-advised bicycle trip I was on my fixed gear. And
I want to hear about this. I like the ill-advised. There's a story or two there.
I had not been training at all. I'd actually just gotten off this this boat that I was sailing on, the Lady Washington, up in off the coast of Oregon. And I was wanted to go on a bike ride just after getting off the boat. Had no training. And
you had your sea legs instead of your bike.
I had my sea legs, not my bike legs, and all I had was a fixed gear. And I was going to go 100 miles. And after the first probably 20, like, just my tailbone was absolutely killing me. So what I did, I had just come off the boat, so I had all these lengths of seine twine with me, and I think I took some socks and like a knit cap, and I wrapped my seat. I sort of made this extra padding on my seat and wrapped it up with these little lengths of line. And I don't really think any other, I mean, could have used P-cord, I guess, but there's not really, tape wouldn't have been the right choice. Like, no other real ties that I can think of would have been the right choice. And just happened to have them. Yeah. It's been many moments like that, tying things onto a backpack while backpacking, fixing backpacking gear, shoelaces.
Well, this is a separate thing, but I've graduated from tying my shoelaces to using the elastic cords.
Oh, yeah.
This is really the only way. I tell you, I've been doing it for years. It was a cool tool suggested by AJ Jacobs, and I've never gone back. All my shoes are these elastic cord things.
I remember that one.
And they're just, I don't tie shoes anymore. So
yeah,
but
I think I'd miss my daily knot tying.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I like your suggestion of the animated knot site, which is really fabulous. And for me, it's really necessary. It transcends the books in terms of being able to actually convey how you tie the knot.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's really great. Okay, so just tell us your third choice.
All right, my third choice. I cannot remember where I learned about this first. It very well may have been Cool Tools, but it's so good, I think it bears repeating if it has indeed been on Cool Tools, and that's French cleat.
Okay.
Which is just about the simplest, little bit of kit that I use all the time. So essentially, I usually make it by ripping down a strip of 3/4 plywood, maybe 3 inches wide, and then ripping it again down the middle at 45 degrees. So you get these two pieces of these two strips of 3/4 plywood. You could really use most anything with a little 45-degree angle on one edge. What that allows you to do is to make rails. I typically will cover a whole wall in these French cleat rails, and then the inverse. You can have the inverse of the same rail, and you can cut off little lengths of that. You can attach it to virtually anything, and it allows for pretty infinitely configurable storage of tools, of shelves. I've hung speakers. These shelves behind me are mounted with French cleat. I use it for mounting cabinets. I think that's typically what it's used for, but I've found the applications that be virtually endless. And usually one of the first things I do when I set up a workshop is make a French cleat wall. So yeah, the French cleats are they're you have a lot of surface area, so they're very, very stable, and you can also level them pretty easily. I mean, the thing you're hanging, and but as you said, they also go up and down very easily too, which most people don't need. But when you're trying to install something, it's the simplest installation because you get to work on the actual structure that hangs it without, with nothing. It's open. It's an open face. Yes. Yeah. And then you just add this thing, and it's a no-brainer just to have it slip in. So yeah, it's a really great thing. I haven't gone so far as making the cleat wall. That's an interesting idea. But yeah, I can see why you do that, and it's very easy to make. So you're right. It's a really cool tool. I know you've talked about the Stanley organizers too, or I think you
Yeah.
use the Harbor Freight ones, and yeah, I've made the the kind of drawer structures for those, and of course I put French cleat on the back of those structures and hang them, and that just
Yeah,
allows it's so easy and so flexible.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I've been using them for picture frames
Hmm.
because bigger ones. Um, it's a little easier to get one up exactly right and level if you have a French cleat, because again, you're working when you can see things instead of having to get behind things and find where that wire is and all that.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, absolutely. I love that.
so that's really great, the French cleat. And there's really no other tool you need other than like a table saw.
Yeah, exactly. And you can use scrap plywood, scrap. I think I usually use 3/4, but I'm pretty sure 1/2 inch would work pretty well.
Yeah.
And I never tried it with MDF, but that would probably work for
Oh yeah,
lighter.
it will work for
Yeah.
sure. So that's great. Okay, so what's your fourth cool tool?
All right. Yeah. The fourth one is sort of a departure from the other three, but this is
Wow.
the Synthstrom Deluge.
Okay,
Uh,
you're holding up something that
uh,
the
it's
kind of
essentially,
about, I don't know, a foot and a half, maybe a foot high, and it's just
yeah.
covered with little square buttons.
Yes, it is. So this thing is just about. I've played synthesizers for a long time, and it's been I've been searching for I don't really like using software very much. It's not really a purist thing as much as I just love the tactile experience of working with hardware and having each piece of hardware having a distinct task. So when I go there and manipulate the controls on that piece of hardware, I know what's going to happen and don't have to go menu diving. Um, and but it's difficult to find pieces of hardware that can control both make music internally and can also control other things, and can do so in an intuitive way where it's easy to compose, easy to save, easy
Mhm.
to perform. And the Synthstrom Deluge is,
Is that what this one is? Can you
yes,
build it up
yes,
again?
it's the Synthstrom Deluge. It's by a small little outfit out of New Zealand. It's a Synthstrom. I don't think they make anything else. I think this is the one thing they make, but this thing has
Oh, you
so
turned
what
it on, and there's some pretty lights
pretty
now.
light. Yeah, so this it has a built-in synthesizer, like a very robust, powerful built-in synthesizer, a drum machine, and a MIDI control, so you can use it as a MIDI sequencer for external gear, and control voltage sequencer as well, so you can control voltage output, so you can
Right.
control bits of modular synthesizer gear.
So these other buttons, are they
Mhm.
all like programmable, or are they already all programmed for this system here?
So this one does have a little bit of, so this one of the things I love about it is it can do virtually everything. It also, you can manage samples. So and there's so many features. It's easy to get lost in it, but there's sort of a surface layer of functionality
Mhm.
that's very easy to access. What this is, you can so this screen right here does a few different functions, or the button matrix does a few different functions. It can actually work as a waveform display when you're um let's see if I can pull that up. When you're editing a there we go. When you're editing a waveform, so this is a basic kick waveform,
Okay.
and you can so you can use that as a screen to you can edit it, you can make it start later in the sample, you can end the
Okay.
sample sooner.
So what you're doing for those who
Sure.
are listening along is that these buttons, or this grid or this surface of buttons, also acts as a screen, like
Mhm.
pixels. So
Yes.
in addition to them being, I guess, active as a response where you can click on it, they actually light up and they're being lit up in some sequence so you can see them a wave go across or
Mhm.
a bar coming down to stop them. So it has double duty, I guess.
Yes. Yeah. So it's both a visual layout. So when you're working with say a program like Fruity Loops, there's a visualization called piano roll, where on one axis you have the notes represented by different keys on a piano, and on the other axis you have the duration of that note. So you can essentially compose melodies by visually by time and note. And you can do that with this as well. It has piano roll capability, so you can kind of make melodies very easily. You can do the same thing with drum beats.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Right.
and when you compose different parts, you can also arrange them in song view. So you can have this whole list of this whole got several different synthesizer
Right.
tracks, a couple sampler tracks, a couple
Right. Right.
drum kit tracks. Then you
Right.
can arrange it all there.
And as
So,
you say, I know that there are software equivalents of this.
mhm.
Do this on a screen, but for you, the benefit is that this is a very tactile. I wouldn't call it analog, but it's certainly like an analog interface to that,
Mhm.
and that is more intuitive for the way you work.
That's more intuitive for the way I work. The other thing that this thing is just I've never encountered anything that has so much functionality packed into so tight and cute of a package. It runs off batteries. There's an internal battery that you can
Mhm.
change out, but that's good for about 5 hours, 5, 6 hours. And there's this built-in speaker. So it's obviously not the best of sound in a
Sure.
small little package, but it makes for you can take this thing. It's about the size of a little thicker than a laptop, but it's
Mhm.
smaller footprint than a laptop. You can take it with it, take it with you anywhere. You can like sketch out songs outside. You can take it on the plane. It's just one compact unit. And then like when you get back into the studio, you can then send those, like if you have programmed certain melodic lines with a placeholder internal synthesizer, you can then send that out to other synthesizers. So you can use it as a sketch, sort of a sketch pad for musical ideas. You can
Mhm.
use it as a full-on composer
Mhm.
for longer pieces. It's battery powered. It also plugs in and interfaces
Right.
with all manner of gear. It's pretty much, yeah, it's kind of hits all the sweet spots for me.
And it must have some small amount of memory too, right?
Yes, the memory is a SD card, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Um,
yeah, enough to store some sketches on.
yes, absolutely.
So is that currently in production or are they
It
just
is. Yeah, the newer versions have an OLED screen. Pretty sure that's right, but it's more of the white kind of low resolution, but still sort of a something you can get a little more information than this just kind of
okay?
red digital readout. So
Uh-huh.
the newer ones are a bit more expensive than this. I think they're around 1,400.
Mhm.
But it's such a cool little company, and it's got a great community of users. And the producers themselves are very responsive, very much involved in the community as well, very responsive to feedback and suggestions for new modes. And it's very active, vibrant community associated with this.
And do you just kind of mess around, kind of fool around to make your own songs? Do you go all the way to actually like producing a finished song that you release and share with,
Um,
or is this
yeah,
more for doodling and um, for your own enjoyment?
I've done a lot of doodling. Um, it was actually another recent Cool Tools episode. I believe the War of Art
Mhm.
was brought up, and that reminded me of the book. And I I read it again after listening to that episode, and I realized how important music is to me and how much I've been sort of putting it off to the side. It's actually, it's even the things that we love, we can can be a lot of work if we're actually if we want to dedicate ourselves to showing up to it. And so I think it's been about 10 years since I've made music very seriously. I've doodled here and there. And as of about a month ago, I've really started diving back into music production and taking that practice more seriously. And
are you sharing it? I guess that would be, to me, a mark of one kind of making, which is that you share it, that it's public in some ways.
That is very much going to happen.
Okay, great.
Still very.
I was wondering if this tool was sort of the kinds of things that would help you get to that point where you have a kind of a professionally would be happy with a polished version of it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it definitely is that kind of tool. It is really easy especially with synthesizers, to kind of think, at least for me, it's been to think that it's going to be easier to share things when I get this next piece of gear.
Okay.
And honestly, I think that was part of my mindset when I bought this, a couple of years ago. But now I have it in my arsenal, and I have this new sort of commitment to this process that is it's feeling like a big value add in my life.
I know that Robin Miller, who has been on our podcast, who was the half of the brothers who invented the Myst games.
Oh, right, yes.
Which had soundtracks. So he wrote all the music for that, and he's a big fan of this OP1, I think they call it. Mm-hmm. This is a little tiny. It almost looks like a toy, which is why I was kind of asking. And but it's it's like a kind of Fisher Price kind of toy keyboard, but it's some kind of synthesizer that he uses for his actually released versions of things that he's generating on this thing that looks like a toy.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of great things about the OP1, and I think that whole series. I've never actually played with one, but I know that you can get incredibly professional results from something that does look fairly toy-like.
Yeah. Well, this is really great. So again, this is called the Synth Lounge. What was it called again?
The Synthstrom. That's SYNTHSTROM. Okay. Synthstrom Deluge is the product. Okay.
And it sounds like a great device if you're into that kind of music.
Mm-hmm.
So Josiah, tell us then about what you'd like to share with our audience. What excites you these days, or what's your passion project?
Yeah. Well, the last several months, I've been moving into a new shop. I've been setting up all my French cleat walls. And
is this something you do professionally, or is this a hobby?
This little column A, little column B. I'm a contractor, and so I'm doing a lot of building and construction during the week, and then in the evenings and weekends, I spend time in the shop. And in this shop, there's also a music studio that I've been in the process of building out. So, and I've also in the last few years gotten really into more analog video art as well.
Analog video art. Trying to think what that means.
So I like using a lot of VCRs, a lot of tapes. So some found footage. Then there's running those through some signal effects processor.
Okay, all right.
And then using a lot of old video mixers as well. So you get and cameras on TVs, and so lots of screens, lots of wires. It's very chaotic and it's one of my favorite things.
Wow, that's really cool. And so that's your current thing. I may have interrupted you in terms of what you're describing. So you're building this workshop.
Yes. Yeah, it's the my main sort of project right now is getting this workshop set up and functional for a wide variety of media. and that includes building out this sort of
good.
music video studio. And the goal is to have a makerspace, sort of community makerspape here in Eugene. There is one here. It's fairly underwhelming. I don't want to say that. They do really well for what they do, but I think they're serving a different sort of demographic sector. People that are just kind of interested in showing up once in a while and doing a little project here and there. And I'd like to cultivate a network of more serious makers. And I'm building out this workshop to be a platform.
Well, if there was a listener in the Eugene area that was interested in participating, make sure that we get a link or somewhere or some way to contact you.
Sure.
To see if that fits with what you have in mind. I love going to other people's workshops just to be inspired, to see some of their solutions, to watch people work. I spend way too much of my time watching people work on YouTube. Because I just learned so much. I think it's a really, I have really, really learned a lot about making things by watching other people make them. And particularly how they recover from mistakes and the little tips that they have, for cutting something. It's like, when you're cutting this, you have to really watch out for this. It's like, well, that would take 10 years to get that experience on your own. When you're milling brass is grippy. Okay, well that's important to know, but that takes a lot of experience to get to that if you didn't have someone tell you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of my favorite ways to spend time is working on projects with other people. And it's just such a wonderful way to both get to know someone as an individual and also learn from a whole different experience set. And absolutely. I love that.
Well, thank you again for your tools, from the French cleats to the knots and Marlinspike and your synthesizer. So thank you for appearing on Cool Tools. We greatly appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kevin.
This year, our Cool Tools blog will be 20 years old, which means we've been posting something new every day for 20 years. It's only possible because of the very engaged and knowledgeable readers and listeners like yourself. You've kept this place going, and we are very grateful for you. With this idea of 20 years in mind, we decided to try an experiment this year, and I'm inviting our guests and listeners to join me on our Cool Tool Show and Tell, which is the program that you're listening to right now. So if you feel you'd make a good guest on this podcast and have 4 uncommon tools that you'd like to share with us, please sign up on our form on the website, and we'll see about inviting you. You must be comfortable talking on a video, and you need to have some tools that you can show. We record on Zoom. We do a YouTube version, a video version of it, as well as an audible version. Fill out the form if you're interested, and list your 4 cool tools, and we'll see if there's a good fit. The applications aren't guaranteed in any way, and we're looking at tools that are new to us and appropriate tools, and whether the times will work for you. So we're really interested in hearing from people all over the world, not just in the US, although the tools have to be available online, easily available online. And if you are a longtime listener, you kind of know what the definition of our tools are. They're very broad. They can be anything that's handy, from something in the kitchen to something you use to travel, to a workshop, to something professional that we may not know about. We're really interested in things that we don't know anything about. So this is an open invitation. We'll give it a try. If you think you make a good guest for this podcast, fill out the form. There'll be a link somewhere on our website. And we look forward to chatting with you. Thank you.